Jay, has everybody logged in?
We have Mary, Chris, Vern, Lorraine, and yourself.
Okay. So no Ann and no Matt.
Matt did stop by and pick up a packet, so maybe he's just.
Matt's name was up a little while ago. Well, there he is.
All right.
Matt, you're muted and sideways.
That's
There you go.
unusual. And did Ann check in?
I have not heard from Ann.
Okay. Well, I hadn't heard from Vern, but he's here, so.
Yes.
Never know.
Good.
Should I wait another couple of minutes to start, or what do you think?
I think we're okay. We have what, 6?
Now you guys can see me, but I can't see you. Is that it?
No, we cannot see.
Yeah, we
you.
can't see you.
Okay. Let me just try one more thing.
You're an attendee, so your video is going to be off.
All right. Okay. I don't know how that happened. I mean, I've done a few successful Zooms, and this wasn't a problem. So.
Yep.
All right. Let's call to order the June 4th meeting of the Conservation Commission. It's 6:03. First item is roll call. So we'll have Mary Talbot Robiano.
Here.
Chris O'Connor.
Here.
Vern Wyman.
Here.
Lorraine Jubert.
Here.
Oh, good. Matt Bradywood is absent, and Heffern is absent. And
I'm here.
Pardon me?
I'm here.
Good.
I'm here.
Second order of business is the approval of the March 3rd, 2020 minutes. By the way, I am David Flanders, and we're also joined by Jay Parker, Principal Planner. Approval of the minutes of the March 3rd meeting. Does anybody have any comments, questions, or anything, corrections? Okay. Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll motion.
A second?
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very
Aye.
good. Motions are approved. Correspondence. Jay, anything?
None at this time.
Any public comments out there?
Doesn't
None.
appear to be any members of the public here.
Okay, no old business. The new business is our conceptual master plan, major land development, Tower Hill Landings Annex, proposed construction of an 11-unit multi-household structure and associated site improvements, AP 34-4, Lot 32, 2095 Kingstown Road. Is anybody here representing the applicant?
I am. It's John Kenyon, attorney for the applicant, Tower Hill Landings Annex LLC. The applicant has entered into an agreement to purchase property at 2095 Kingstown Road. The property is 1.23 acres in size, and it's partially zoned commercial neighborhood and partially zoned R10. It's also within the Kingstown Road Special Management District. There were previously 2 residential dwelling units located at the rear of the property, and there was a restaurant in the front, which was most recently Kachina Twist, and long before that it was Iggy's. It was most recently approved as a Dan's restaurant, which this commission may have reviewed a few years ago. That was never built, and the lot is now vacant. The applicant operates the multifamily residential complex adjacent to the property. They're proposing 11 dwelling units in 2 buildings located at the front of this lot. The units will be serviced by public water and sewer. The project meets the density and dimensional requirements under the zoning ordinance. There'll be 9 4-bedroom units and 2 2-bedroom units. One of the 4-bedroom units and one of the 2-bedroom units will be designated as affordable in compliance with the town's inclusionary zoning requirements. The approval for Dan's included a large curb cut out onto Kingstown Road. The applicant's proposing no new curb cut and will access the property over the existing curb cut on the adjacent property. Since the project contains 2 residential buildings, it's considered a multi-household land development project, which has a couple of requirements we'll need to request waivers from. The first is a 100-foot setback from Kingstown Road. Some of you, that if you're familiar with the Kingstown Road Special Management District, the thought behind that was to move the buildings closer to the road and have the parking behind the buildings. So that requirement directly conflicts with the Kingstown Road design element, which is why we're requesting a waiver from it. The second requirement is that buildings be separated by 50 feet, and we're proposing 10 feet of separation. We're here tonight as we filed an application for master plan approval and have a hearing scheduled for later this month in front of the planning board. At this time, the plans are conceptual. If they're approved, the applicant will move forward with preparing more detailed plans, obtain any state approvals, and then come back to the planning board for preliminary plan review. We appeared before the planning board previously at a pre-application and made modifications based on the feedback from the board members. At that time, they expressed concerns with the number of parking spaces and requested additional buffering to the property to the north. The additional buffering has been included on the new plans, and the applicant's proposing a total of 44 spaces, parking spaces, and 40 are required. We also revised the plans to show integration with the existing parking lot on the adjacent property, and we're also now proposing pervious pavement for the new parking areas. With me tonight is the project engineer, Steve Cabral from Crossman Engineering, and he's going to go over briefly the existing conditions, the proposed site plan, and the changes we made in response to the planning board. And then we also have Russ Johnson, who's showing up as Chris Bischoff tonight. He's the project manager. He'll address any operational questions the commission may have. So, Steve, if you want to go forward and go over existing and then proposed plans.
Oh, sure. Oh, Jay, could we go back to the existing aerial photo? Yep, thank you. And again, I'm Steve Cabral with Crossman Engineering in Warwick. And as John indicated, we'd already gone through the state and local process to obtain permits for the Dan's Place. And I believe that was in 2017. And because of that, we have quite a bit of information about the site. And one bit of information is that we know exactly where the existing wetlands are because they've all been approved by or verified by DEM. And what you see in the upper left corner on the adjacent lot, it's this dashed yellow line here. This is the documented edge of the existing vegetated wetland. And that wetland does have a 50-foot perimeter wetland that extends into the site. And also in the middle of that wetland, there's a small channel, which we considered and DM agreed is an intermittent stream. Therefore, we added a 100-foot riverbank to that. But as you can see, under existing conditions, the site's already fully developed. And I suspect that a lot of people come to you and say that their project's going to have no impact on the environment. But with this project, there's no doubt there's going to be a significant benefit to the wetland. And I'll briefly explain why. Currently, the elevation along Kingstown Road to the back drops by about 8 feet. So all of the pavement at the existing restaurant just flows unmitigated into you can see this little channel here. So during a rainstorm, most of the flow flows to the back. It washes down this eroded channel. And then there's another channel that flows right along the back property line into the wetland. Now, under current conditions, there's no recharge that occurs. There's no water quality measures that exist. Everything is left untreated and discharges into the wetland. And I should point out that we are within the watershed of the Saugatucket River, which does have a TMDL for bacteria, fecal coliform. So as we develop the drainage design, we will make sure that we address that specific pollutant of concern. And what we're proposing, oh, Jay, could we go to the next aerial? Yeah. Okay, as John mentioned, for all of the new paved areas, we're proposing to use the porous asphalt, which will have a filtering course below it, and then a crushed stone reservoir course below that, so that for the water quality storm, which is the theoretical 1-inch rain event, we'll actually be able to collect and infiltrate that below the parking lot. So that in itself is a significant water quality improvement. And it's also going to increase the recharge that occurs today. Because as I mentioned, the existing pavement is not able to infiltrate, and there's no infiltration system. So we'll be accommodating all of the new DEM standards. In regards to the runoff from the rooftop, the concept is that we're going to collect all of the rooftop in a drain. Beneath this grassed area, we anticipate we'll have a small underground storage system to attenuate the peak flow. And then we'll have a small outlet pipe that's going to discharge into a landscape depression, which we plan on designing as a sand filter just to remove, added pollutants. So again, we're using all of the most current water quality and recharge standards to improve the site as much as possible. And actually, we anticipate that we'll actually improve the water quality and recharge. And because the site's already developed, we could utilize the redevelopment standards, but we are going to do our best to design the site as though it's new development, so that there is a clear benefit. And as John mentioned, the area closest to the wetland, we're creating about a 50 feet area of landscaping. So again, we're pulling even the porous pavement as far away as we can from that wetland, just to maximize filtering, before anything discharges into the wetland. Now your thought may be, well, that infiltration or a sand filter is very close to the wetland, but if we were to go back to the existing aerial photo, you'd see that there's actually an existing house here that, well, it was recently demolished. Yes, here it is right here. And the design that we used for the dance place was not quite as extensive when it comes to water quality improvements. For dance place, we did utilize standard pavement, and then we did have an underground storage system that discharged into a sand filter. But we feel with the addition of porous pavement, in addition to the sand filter, we'll even be improving the conditions above and beyond what DEM already permitted for dance place. Now, because this is only the conceptual master plan stage, we really don't have the nitty-gritty details for me to show you, but that's a very brief overview of the concept.
Steve, it's John Kenyon. Can you also just explain the access to the property, how dance was going to be accessed, and then how the applicant's proposing?
Yes, I will. For dance place, the main access was going to be pretty much, if you could see where my cursor is moving, pretty much right in the middle of the parcel. There was going to be an in and an out. And so all of the traffic was going to be essentially opposite. I believe there's West Wind Estates, West Wind Circle. So there was going to be an in and an out offset from West Wind. And with the new proposal, as John mentioned, we're actually proposing a new curb line right along Kingstown Road. The reason for the curb line is to help keep the stormwater runoff from eroding the new lawn and directing it to an existing state DOT drain line. And our new access is going to be through the existing apartment complex, right through here. So we'll be using the existing curb cut that's there, and we'll be removing that large expanse of pavement that you see today. So from a traffic perspective, it's certainly a large improvement over the original dance place. In dance place, I believe it had approximately 75 parking spaces due to the size of the restaurant. And this type of apartment use certainly has a much lower traffic generation during the PM peak hours.
Thanks, Steve. And also, the property is serviced by public water and sewer, correct?
Yes, we did receive within the past week confirmation from South Kingston Sewer that they can service the site. And we received confirmation from the Kingstown Water District that they could provide water service to the site. So there certainly will be no septic system for this facility. So this, as I said, this really is a great opportunity. I know I'm biased, but it really is a great opportunity to improve the surface water quality discharging into that wetland and ultimately the Saugatucket. And we're certainly more than willing to work with the Conservation Commission and incorporate any of your preferences, in the design.
Steve, this is Lorraine. I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
The area identified as stormwater management area, is that the sand filter?
Yeah, that's the location where we propose the sand filter. Yes, when we do the final numbers, it may not need to be that large.
Okay. So that's for treatment. Is that also handling storage?
And yes and no. The primary storage for the porous pavement is going to be the stone reservoir below the porous pavement,
Okay.
and only the overflow from the porous pavement will flow into the sand filter. In regards to the rooftop, we're proposing to have an underground chamber below this landscaped area to help attenuate the peak flow so that we can have a lower peak flow discharging into the sand filter. So naturally, there will be a little bit of storage in the sand filter,
Right.
but it will be supplemented with the stone reservoir course below the porous pavement
Right.
and the underground tank that we propose in this area.
And where is the underground tank going?
It'll be in this grassed area on the north side.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
up in this area.
All right. Do you have sufficient water table depth for the permeable pavement?
That's a good question. The groundwater table varies from only about a foot near the wetland to about, I believe it was 4 feet in this area. We do have quite a few soil evaluations that we did for Dan's Place. But
Right.
what we did have to do to accommodate the clearance to groundwater is we did have to raise the back portion of the parking lot.
Oh, see
So-
the building?
Yeah, so as I said, from the front to the back, the ground slopes about 8 feet. So what we're going to do to provide adequate clearances, when it's built, the back parking lot won't be 8 feet lower. It may only be 5 feet lower so that we can provide adequate clearance.
Does
but
DEM normally approve that?
they can approve it as long as you provide a sand layer below the system.
Hmm.
Basically what DEM typically does not like is they do not like to see infiltration systems built in fill.
Right.
But the way the regulations were prepared is you can install a sand filter in fill, provided that you don't bring gravel fill below it. You just have to extend the sand all the way down, into the native soil.
So you're basically going to be filling in the perimeter wetland.
Well, actually, the perimeter wetland actually doesn't even extend to where the porous pavement is.
No, but it extends to where the sand filter is, right?
Oh, yes, exactly. It does. And for Dan's Place, we also had a sand filter system built in that area also.
Mhm.
And DEM did approve it because they recognized the water quality benefit and the fact that there was a house there and it was already disturbed.
Right.
But what I promise we will do is when we finish the sizing of the sand filter, if there's any way possible, we could make it smaller or maybe extend it closer to the building. We will add more of a landscape buffer from
Mhm.
and in the, the developed area.
Okay. So is any of the other landscaping around the buildings going to be reserved for bioretention or rain garden to further reduce runoff?
What we hope to do is the landscaping in this odd-shaped island. We hope to make all of this a depressed area so that this will act as a bioretention. And then, of course, the plantings near the building we can't, but we may be able to, in this recreational area, just create a small depression that could help control runoff.
Mhm.
Now, by the zoning code, we're required to have 10% of the land set aside for passive recreation. So
Mhm.
we do need to set aside 5,000 square feet of lawn area that would not be set aside for drainage.
Right. It just seems like the landscaping around the buildings are prime territory for bioretention rather than just ornamental landscaping.
You know, we could talk to the architect. My only concern is avoiding moisture buildup below the building slab.
Mhm.
So if the architect can be confident that he can protect moisture from the building slab, then we'll certainly discuss that.
Right.
So today, I'm not ruling anything out. I'm just, based on my experience, that we always find moisture beneath the slab that becomes a mold issue. So I'm hesitant to jump and say, yes, we will, but we will look into it.
Okay. One other quick question about the number of parking spaces. Did you say that the planning board wanted this many spaces?
The planning board wanted to make sure that we didn't build more than we really needed.
Right.
And according to the zoning code, we required, I believe it's 40.
Right.
And the way the site was designed, we provide a net increase of only 44. So
Right.
the planning board expressed comfort to us that they felt that was reasonable.
So is that 40 in the code, is that the maximum or minimum?
That's the minimum.
That's the minimum? Okay. Do you think it's possible to just leave some of them undeveloped and unpaved unless they're needed, like the ones in the back where it's wettest? Like reserve parking?
Reserve. What do you mean build it as lawn?
Yeah, leave it as undeveloped. And then if there's a demonstrated need for up to 44 spaces, then you could use those undeveloped spaces for parking as the need is demonstrated in that back corner.
You know,
Right.
that's a,
I'll take a shot at that. This is Jay. The surface, the parking surface needs to be a substantial surface unless otherwise approved by the planning board for
Yeah.
frequent use.
Okay.
The planning board was satisfied that the daily demand on the parking would constitute the need for a substantial parking surface and not something along the lines of gravel or grass area.
Oh, right, right. I wasn't suggesting gravel. I was suggesting not any parking, like eliminating some of the spaces and leaving them grassed or landscaped, and then paving them if needed. So like
Lorraine,
reserve
Lorraine, this
area.
is David. What 4 spaces were you thinking of eliminating?
Well, I was thinking of the ones in the back corner near the stormwater management area.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
That's in the perimeter wetland.
Yep.
So by the zoning ordinance, required to have 40 spaces, and they only really have a surplus of 4, is that correct?
Yep.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Well,
So-
I guess I just wonder whether even 40 is needed, because sometimes there's vast acres of parking, but you know, if the planning board feels that many is needed, then they're going with the minimum at least, or close to it.
Well, it's a requirement of the zoning ordinance. So it would put them in a variant situation. And while I share the sentiments with the amount of parking and frequently unused parking, many times that rears its head in retail facilities and shopping facilities
Right,
where they plan for more than they really need.
right.
Being a residential development, aside from empty spaces during the day, it would be presumed that the majority of the parking would be filled in the evening when people are home.
Mhm.
Yep.
Sure, I understand.
Yeah, I can comment that I've got some friends that live in the existing buildings, and at night all the parking spaces are filled. I think there's a shortage as it stands.
Right.
The
Okay.
applicant had expressed previously that there was in fact a shortage of existing space. Their hope was that the parking lot improvement associated with this would help address some of that shortage. Even if it was just 4 spots, it would benefit the existing parking conditions that are out there.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jay, I've got a question for you. Does this type of porous pavement, is that completely exempt from counting towards impervious lot coverage?
I would say yes.
I
Mhm.
mean, in the same way that a gravel driveway is exempt.
Well, gravel driveways they are by DEM standards and many times by us considered impervious because of compaction issues. The way that pervious pavement is designed, it will not compact. There's an element of maintenance involved in making sure that it functions the way that it was designed and installed. So therefore, I don't believe it would be, it would certainly mitigate any drainage concerns or drainage issues.
Is there for either Jay or Steve, is there a lifespan of this type of pavement? Does it, you mentioned maintenance, but does it get clogged up eventually? Does its functionality decrease over time?
Well, it's similar to regular pavement in the sense that it does need, well, it does need a little bit more maintenance than standard pavement. For example, typically about 4 times a year minimum, you actually need to run a vacuum over this to prevent the pores from clogging.
Hmm.
And so actually there is a significant benefit, but it does come with an added maintenance cost. So the life of the pavement would be similar to regular pavement, but it does require more maintenance to make sure, as I said, it doesn't clog.
Yeah,
Would
I
there
guess
be-
my concern would be that because it's such a integral part of this, of water maintenance here, of runoff, my concern would be that 10 years from now or 15 or 20 years, it wouldn't be functioning as well as it does on day one. And I don't know if there's anything that could be included that would encourage or require that type of regular maintenance to ensure that it was still doing what we're all hoping it would do.
Hi, David Flanders here. I was going to ask the same question about maintenance contracts such as that we require for certain septic systems.
There's no septic.
Vern Wyman, I have some experience at the University of Rhode Island with porous pavement. We have sections of it that have finally aged and there has been some sediment buildup, but for the most part, they've stood up for 20 years and have worked very well. They do require that vacuuming, and the other aspect is you cannot obviously use sand for snow and ice management, and if you're going to use salt, at that point, magnesium chloride is the preferred method. I think Ragtime has had the contract for periods of time with the maintenance of the surfaces at URI, and they have met those requirements as part of their contract. So there is precedent for that in the community as well.
It's been my past experience that DEM will require an operation and maintenance be recorded. And in other towns, they've actually had the town become a party to that so they can also enforce it.
Mhm. In addition to the suggestions that Vern had about no sanding and minimal salting, the recommendations also are that, and also in addition to vacuuming, that an inspector be on site when the asphalt is delivered to make sure that the mix is correct, because sometimes they need to add polymers of some sort to prevent clogging of the asphalt after it dries. And also the inspector would ensure that it's properly installed. And then in terms of maintenance, the other factor would be no storing salt. I mean, not salt, snow on the parking lot, because snow plowed from maybe the Rollins Drive area is likely to have a lot of sand in it. So no sand application and no snow storage on the permeable lot.
Yeah, no, I agree. Those are all great comments. And the other thing we'll be proposing is that we'd like to be on site when they excavate for the underlying reservoirs, because if there is any layer of unsuitable soils, we also want to make sure that that's replaced. But everything you all suggested were good
I'd
sound
just like
recommendations.
to add, if I may, that we self-perform our own on-site maintenance, and we take care of that. So, we will have that in our protocols, so that, it's not going to be a outside contractor or someone that would be handling that. We'd be managing that ourselves.
Steve, one more question about the runoff from Route 108. Did you say that it currently goes over the lawn on the proposed development property and then into a DOT storm drain?
Oh, yeah, what I meant to say is right now there's no curbing.
Right.
And during heavy rains, there is quite a bit of gutter flow that rushes down from both directions. And we were concerned that if we only had lawn extended to the edge of the pavement,
Right.
that the gutter flow would actually erode the edge of the lawn.
Right.
And so we were proposing to put curbing just to prevent the overflow of the gutter flow to erode the new lawn.
Right.
Now, in very extreme flooding cases, what we have seen is that because there's a low point in front of the property, if during an extreme event where that catch basin is clogged, water has been known to flow through Dan's place, but at that point, there'd be quite a puddle in Kingstown Road, and it would go rushing down into the wetland. That's not the intended discharge of the state DOT drain.
Right.
But we also want to be sensitive that when we put the curb, we do want to allow some type of escape for the water during a severe occasion, say if the DOT drain was clogged.
Okay.
But currently in the pavement, there's like a little gutter right along the front of the old restaurant that keeps the water during regular storm events in Kingstown Road.
Right. So have you spoken with DOT about your plans to put in a curb?
We have not submitted any applications to DOT for this application. They did approve the Dan's Place, which did have, I believe we had a berm in the front, except at the new driveway location.
Mm.
So the concept with the Dan's Place that was approved was similar, except I believe we went with the less expensive berm as opposed to the curb.
Right.
And like I said, DOT did approve that.
I'm just wondering whether if it eventually goes to a DOT storm drain, that if they would be maybe they would be interested in putting in a better swale that goes to their storm drain.
Yeah, we'll certainly bring that to their attention and work with them, because now do you see the yellow line right here? That yellow line is actually the property line.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is probably about 10 feet the DOT could install something if they so desired.
Right. Well, I think they have a stormwater pollution control plan for the Saugatucket. Have you looked at that?
Well, basically their SCP, the stormwater control plan,
Right.
only conceptually identifies potential, what they call STU, stormwater treatment units.
Right.
And there was not anything on this specific property.
Okay.
But basically their STUs and the SCP are based on the TMDL,
Right.
which is exactly what we plan on designing to accommodate or to address.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other comments or questions?
Just one clarification. I know there appeared on some of the drawings indication of a right-of-way and a water service coming from the south into the sort of the eastern end of the property. Is that? But I believe the Kingston line is in this is in the 108 location. So is that the old United Water connection, or is that one of the routes that water will take, or one of Kingston Water's lines?
Yep, that's a good question. The property is right on the dividing line between the Suez Water District and the Kingston Water District. And the way the properties were, before the buildings were demolished, there was a domestic service line from the apartment complex that served the homes, yet the restaurant actually had its fire service from Kingstown Water or Kingstown Road. We did have discussions. Well, first we went to Kingston Water. Kingston told us they believe Suez Water wanted to serve the site. As Suez realized that because of the elevations of the site, they could not provide adequate fire service. So then we went back to Kingston Water, and Kingston agreed to provide water for fire and domestic. So we will no longer need that easement in the back.
I see.
This is an advisory opinion to the planning board, just whether we favor the project or not. Lorraine, as you had some concerns that I'd like to see articulated in our proposal, could you make the draft motion?
Sure.
Lorraine, if I can interject,
Yeah.
I think it'd be appropriate to make sure if that's the extent of comments from the board. If anybody else, I thought Chris might have started.
I have one quick question. I think John.
Thank you. I apologize.
I think John had mentioned that there was a waiver or two waivers that are required, and one of them is a setback from the Kingston Road. I was just wondering how much of a waiver are you asking for?
So, Chris, the multifamily requirement is that it has to be set back 100 feet from the main road. The Kingstown Road setback requirement we meet. So it's a little confusing. Generally, when you do a multifamily land development project, they want it further away from the road. In Kingstown Road, they want everything on the road with the parking and back. So we're kind of caught in between. So we're asking for a waiver from the one that would require that we push it further back on the property.
And this is Jay. The Kingstown Road Management District allows for the planning board to reduce that front yard setback down to 0 for obviously justified reasons.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. I apologize.
No worries.
How close are the buildings as depicted on the plans?
25 feet
25 feet from the property edge or from the road?
from the property line.
Okay.
I just had one more question. When are you planning construction?
Well, we are looking at the schedule to continue through our next meeting would be with the planning board. Then we will have to go to the zoning board. And then we have a couple more meetings. So we're hopeful that we will be through this process potentially September, October. So if that is what happens, then we'd be looking to get started this year towards the end of the year. So, but it's going to basically depend on, getting approvals from everyone to move forward.
So one of my concerns there is because this is within the perimeter wetland and the riverbank area, if construction is occurring during the wet season, that seems like that could cause a lot more sedimentation in the stream. Is that something you can avoid, the construction during the wet season?
what we can do is make sure that, because as you know, we have to prepare a sediment and soil erosion control plan. And the thought we had is that we could enhance the soil erosion controls along the perimeter wetland as a safety precaution. And we could also grade the site early on in a manner that during a normal rain event, the flow would actually drain to the south away from the wetland into a sediment basin. So we do believe that there are measures we can take to minimize siltation. And what we've actually seen is we tend to get more siltation, say sometimes during summer events when you get the heavy thunderstorms and the rainfall intensity is very high. During the wet season, when the precipitation intensity tends to be a little bit less, sometimes it's actually easier to control.
Mm-hmm.
So personally, I'm not worried about doing the work during the wet season. No, knowing that the intensity is typically less.
Yeah, it's just that all the bare soil should be covered, vegetated or otherwise covered after mid-October. Isn't that right?
If you're going to leave, if the work stops for the winter season, but if you continue to work, then as long as everything has to be directed towards a sediment basin.
Mm.
So what we would do is outside of the sand filter, we would have a sediment basin. So the water would first flow to the basin to help remove the silt. But I do agree that if construction were to halt for the winter shutdown season, at that time, the soil would have to be covered in some manner.
Mm. Okay, seems like the SCSC plan would have to be thoroughly thought out and regularly inspected and enforced.
Yes, it certainly should. And we're certainly more than happy to share it with you all.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
Just one minor item. I noticed there's an area reserved at the back of the site for dumpster and recycling facilities. I presume that that's a solid slab there, and would some retention of any runoff that might occur be advisable given its proximity to the collection point and the proximity to the perimeter wetland?
Yeah, that's a good point. We did intend a concrete slab, but we could certainly put a 6-inch curbing around it. That certainly would be beneficial.
That's great.
All right.
Good idea.
Yep. Okay.
Anything else before we proceed to a motion? Lorraine, do you want to make that motion?
Sure.
Including
I'll make a
what
motion.
we just talked about, by the way.
Yes, right. First of all, we recognize that the shared access from Rollins Drive and the reduced frontage from the buildings and closer siting of the buildings is one way to help reduce impervious cover. So we recommend those design methods. We are a bit concerned about the depth to water table and the filling that's going to occur. But without more information, we would have to rely on DEM to ensure that all protective measures are taken. The curbing along Route 108 seems to be one way to reduce runoff crossing into the property and down gradient towards the wetland. We're pleased to see the use of permeable pavements. My only concern is that if for some reason DEM does not approve permeable pavements due to water table depth or any other condition, that the applicant would have to come back to us with other types of stormwater management measures that could be accommodated on this site to reduce runoff to the same extent possible.
Do we want to include language requiring a maintenance contract?
Most definitely. So in terms of the asphalt, installation of, design and installation of the asphalt or the permeable pavement parking lot, that the plans be reviewed by an outside expert, and there be an on-site inspector when the permeable parking lot is installed, to ensure that the asphalt mix is correct and that the installation is correct, and that the maintenance contract afterwards be developed that would include no sand application, no salt if possible, vacuuming as needed, and prevention of runoff from polluted areas or potential pollutants such as the dumpster, where the dumpster would be on a impermeable surface with curbing. And that the maintenance contract would be maintained and reports sent to the town so that they could keep track of the maintenance occurring. Also, no snow storage on the permeable lot, whether that snow is coming from the Rollins Drive area or elsewhere, since that often contains sand. We're also concerned about construction during the wet season and during frozen conditions. So we would like to ensure that the soil erosion sediment control plan addresses those issues carefully, and if necessary, provides for a third-party inspector that would be there to conduct inspections and send summary reports to the town.
I would also like to add, just as a note to the applicant, doesn't need to be part of our motion. Jay, you can correct me if I needed, but that when the landscaping plans go to the planning board, they should include the town's specifications that are in the subdivision regulations, planting and regulations.
Good point there, David. And also using native species and low input grasses without fertilizer.
I was just going to ask. Yeah.
And no irrigation.
There's the motion. Does anybody have any amendments to that motion? If not, do we hear a second to the motion?
I will second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Very good. The motion passes as proposed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
good night.
you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Steve.
thanks.
Just zoning.
Good discussion. Jay, is there any update from staff on planning department activities?
The only information I have is that the planning director has announced she will be leaving at the end of the month.
Kayla?
Yep.
Oh.
Kayla,
Yes.
where's she going?
She is returning home to Vermont for personal reasons.
Okay,
They have a family estate, and her husband's got a job up there. So she's going home to facilitate the management of the family compound or land that they have. And
that's too bad.
yeah,
That's too bad.
So,
Our next meeting date is going to be July 7th. Jay, if anybody has any agenda items to propose for that meeting, what is that deadline? The 29th or the 30th of June?
give me 1 second. Yeah, I would say 29th or 30th.
Okay, and you and I will be in touch before then. Jay, when are you next in the office?
Monday.
Okay, I'll give you a call.
As an
Matt, how-
and just to further explain, if anybody's inquiring, at the planning department, we are working, between Kayla and I, we're working from every other day. We're alternating. So I was in the office today. I'll be home tomorrow, back in on Monday. She'll be.
Okay. And Matt, how's the house coming?
It's non-existent still, but probably within the next week or two, I'm pulling the building permit and gonna start excavating maybe in the next 4 weeks. So yeah, it's a summer project for this year.
Give us an update in July.
Good luck with that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting.
Does anybody else have anything to add for the good of the commission? If not, we are adjourned. The time is 6:52. Thank you guys for doing this, and Jay, thank you for facilitating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good night,
Very good.
everyone.
Good night.
Thank you all. Stay sane.
You too.
Yeah,
You too.
Jay, I'll give you a call on Monday. I want to figure out what went wrong here that I couldn't, that I logged in wrong.
Yeah, you can even call me tomorrow if you want. I'll be home. I can try to do a practice session with you and see if we can get it to duplicate or not.
Because the TRC went well. The TRC was fine.
Yeah.
And also when at TRC and another meeting I attended, the speaker on